Yo, 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 what is going on, AoEM Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and in today's video, we are going to be illuminating the truth behind what to actually expect in this path to Imperial City special server event, and how there is a dark side to it. There's also some potential good sides, and I just want to give some full context because this event has been ran before in other Kingdom Builders, so I'm going to give you some historical reference. I'm going to talk about the event. I'm going to show you some videos, and then at the end, I'm going to go over the massive big points that you're probably going to want to know before you consider joining in on this event. Okay, as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up because it helps out a lot. So let's first go and give you some historical reference here that in another game, Infinity Kingdom, that I played as well and was a content creator in, they also ran this event. Actually, not even just once, they ran it multiple times. Now, their strategy was to run this coinciding with regional releases. So for example, when the Japan region released, when the Korean region released, etc., others, they basically ran this event as kind of a celebration of new region coming in, new players coming in to give an influx into the player base, and also as a way for them to get some CCs involved in this as well. The first time around, it was kind of mainly NA-based CCs. The next time around, there was a lot of international CCs that ended up participating in, I believe, the second round of this. And so this is just not the first time that this kind of thing has been done. So let's go, and I want to show off now a video real quick from the Age of Empires mobile official channel where, and I'm not going to play any music, I'm just going to kind of scroll through a little bit, but you can see this is where Chisgul's there promoting. We then have, I think if we scroll a little bit more, then you get Sneaky's promoting it. And as we go a little bit more, we get Omni's full-fledged face going ham with us, and I think he's talking about Giga Chads. Listen, to each their own. Really like that t-shirt. I could tell you've been working out. Aside from all of that, let's now transition and segue into what the flyer is here for the event. Path to Imperial City special server event. Get ready for an electrifying event on a brand new special server. Alliances will engage in intense strategic battles, all fighting for the ultimate prize, control of the Imperial City. The first alliance to occupy to conquer and hold the city will win epic rewards. Here's your 3 content creators. We could see Sneaky's basically being like, well, I'm different than everyone else. No. Server launch is going to be October 20th, 45 days of battle, standard alliance building, going through the tutorial, growing your alliance, capturing more territory, etc. Epic Showdown will clash using tactical brilliance and power to be the first to capture the Imperial City. And then here's the rewards. The first alliance to occupy the Imperial City will win 3 iPhone 16 Pros, 256 gigs, 100 Amazon gift cards Amazon gift cards, $50 each, valued at a total of $10,000. So it's the first alliance to occupy the city will win these. So that means 100 players and 3 players if you're thinking about the 3 iPhones, right? So if you have more than 103 players, well, you're going to have to maybe figure out a contribution system to go off of that. Plus, the leader of the victorious alliance will be invited for an official interview, so it's kind of like 104 people get stuff. Now, the server name has not been announced yet, but it might be a custom name if they end up opting for that. Eligibility for people that can win these, or all players on the server are eligible to participate. Well, keep in mind, yeah, that makes sense, but only one alliance is going to be winning unless they end up giving rewards to people outside of a single alliance. The winning alliance will be revealed within 24 hours of the Imperial City's capture. Prizes will be coordinated directly with the alliance leader for distribution. So, this is a very important detail to keep in mind because I am going to circle back to this a little bit later. All right, now, let's go. I have to make a note here. All right. Let's go to the next screenshot here, which is going to be the event that I had mentioned before, right? So you can see this here, where back then you can see some of the people that were a part of the first Revival of Cities event back in January of 2025. And you can see what the rules are here as an example. I don't know if I could zoom in here. Let's see. Can I? Okay, no. It's not going to let me zoom in. Oh, wait, hang on. Will it here? We got it. I don't know if it's going to correct itself on the text. It looks a little blurry on my screen, but I'll read it. Basically, stage 1 is occupying cities. Stage 2 is occupying higher level cities. And then you have a leaderboard for attack, a leaderboard for construction. They give you some point calculators, and that's kind of how they're essentially going to end up running this particular event. Then, let me show you some old footage real quick of when I was covering Infinity Kingdom. And this is day 1 of the event, which is Revival of Cities, day 1. Japan enters, you can see there, because that was the region of players that ended up coming in. There's some early hiving that was going on, a little burning here and there that was happening. And then we get to what eventually was the stage 1 rankings are out, right? So this was a little bit later on, and you can see kind of how the map ended up playing out. Now in Infinity Kingdom, you have factions, and essentially you have 3 different factions, and those colors are blue, green, and red, but you could have multiple alliances in each of those factions. So in this case, you can see that blue and green pretty much won most of the territory, and then red was kind of opted out. So it's kind of like a third of those alliances that were participating were pretty much scrapped, more or less, and then you have half of the, or 2/3 of the factions left. But then again, sometimes you can have different power imbalances, even if it does end up showing 2 different factions. And so this kind of culminates and comes all the way back to me wanting to talk about what I think are some of the main points now. There's a couple things here. Number one is that in these particular types of events, there will be a lot of activity. You're going to have a lot of players that are going to be interested in wanting to participate in this, whether it be for wanting to compete for the rewards, for wanting to join a content creator and be a part of their alliance, for wanting to maybe do their own alliance and gather people for that at a shot to win, or join another alliance that's doing it even if it's outside of the CC's alliances as an opportunity and chance to win. There will also be a high level of player drop-off. And this is due to actually a number of reasons. You will see a high level of player drop-off in the beginning stages, was probably within the first week, because you'll end up seeing this promoted, but people, like with anything, will figure out if they want to decide to keep playing the game or not. You will then see another big, massive drop-off within Zone 1. And the reason for this is because in Zone 1, you're going to probably end up seeing, there's a very high percentage chance this will happen, a lot of PvP. And why is that? Well, keep in mind, the way that this kingdom and server is being promoted is not as a kind of kumbaya, let's all kind of sit around the campfire and roast marshmallows together and figure out how we're all going to enjoy this trip, you know, hiking through the Sierra, whatever the mountains are, right? And going or down some kind of trail together and working to build a kingdom that is going to end up with the highest amount of activity, the most amount of players working together, and setting yourself up for a future KVK environment. Now, that is what traditionally is done, even if some kingdoms and servers have growing pains in a kind of normal setting on average. However, and again, we're not talking about the amount of alliances that'll be left there, right? Just kind of speaking in highlight generalities. However, in this particular kind of kingdom and server, the level of volatility, the level and amount of PvP, and potentially even toxicity that just kind of comes generally with a lot more general active player base, will probably see an increased volume. And that is because if you're promoting this and you're going to end up having a lot of players participate and a lot of alliances that are made, keep in mind, you cannot fit, 20 alliances in a healthy way for each of the Zone 1s. Maybe it could be somewhere between like 2 and 4. I'd have to take a look at the objectives myself and kind of look at how you would split those things up. And I'm just kind of going off of a general average here for what I've usually seen in other kingdom builders for Zone 1s, is that you can get away with 2 to 4, maybe even more, just depending on the Zone 1. But then you'll have some people that'll make that case and say, well, no, it's more like 1 or 2 in a Zone 1. And some people might even go super hardcore and say, well, no, it's only going to be 1 alliance. So let's use that as an example. Let's say it's 1 to 2 alliances that are going to go in, but let's say each Zone 1 has 10 plus alliances. Well, if you're only going to really be able to have 1 to 2 alliances that are going to be able to have all the objectives, capping the gates / passes, the harbors or docks, that doesn't really leave a lot left over for others. And keep in mind, this is all, you also kind of have to view this as a story mode approach where people like to progress. They like to be able to experience everything that a kingdom has to offer. And for many people, this is going to be their first kingdom experience. That's also something that people have to take into account. This isn't just going to be for the people that are going to restart or remake an account or wait to actually start their AoEM experience and make an account here, even if they have previous kingdom builder experience. You're going to have a large population of people here, typically the majority of population in any new kingdom builder for a new server that's releasing, which is new downloads. And so this is also one of those things that, just like with any kingdom, can kind of make or break a player's experience. And this is, once again, just something else that you're going to have to add on as an additional factor that's going to go into what that day-to-day experience is going to be like for players in this kingdom. The next one is that beyond having aggressive Zone 1 fighting and a survival Darwinism of the fittest that's going to play out, this will also happen in Zone 2. Now, keep in mind, the reason why Zone 1 is going to see the heaviest amount of player drop-off is because that's where all the players and all the alliances are going to be in before they advance to the next zone. I would anticipate something like 1 to 2 alliances on average at minimum making it out of Zone 1 and going into Zone 2. Now, you have 6 Zone 1s, but you have 3 Zone 2s. So let's say on the high end you have 2 healthy, active power alliances that make it out of each Zone 1. That means you're going to have 4 alliances going into each Zone 2, and then what will probably happen is 2 alliances on average, give or take, but I would estimate 2, and maybe in some of the hardcore cases 1, that will make it out. So I'll say 1 to 2 again. Will make it into Zone 2 and kind of really set themselves up. And then eventually, when you get to the final zone, right, maybe you'll have 3 to 4, 3 to 5 alliances on average that will probably compete. Maybe 6 in the high end, but I would probably average it's going to be like 3 to 5. That'll be competing for the final zone. If it's more than that, well, fantastic. But then eventually, you're going to have 1 alliance that is going to have to capture this. Even if you make allies, even if you have agreements with other alliances, you're going to have 1 alliance that captures it in the end. And so that's why all of that really factors in to a more volatile kingdom environment. Now, the next thing to keep in mind is that, and this is not necessarily against any of the content creators, it is just a realistic expectation for what will happen. All of the content creators, potentially with maybe the exception of 1, pretty much quit that Kingdom 136 out of those 4 CCs that were there right when the event ended, if not shortly afterwards. And then eventually all of them stopped playing in that and went back to their main accounts or re-rolled for a new one. And this is pretty standard. Now, it doesn't mean that, like I said, everyone will, but keep in mind that Mr. Sneaky, Chisgul, Omni, they are not incentivized to keep playing and to stay in this kingdom. Why? Well, if they just want to plan to make content and they don't really care about their alliance doing anything, their group doing anything, that's very much a possibility. And if that happens, that's great. But keep in mind, each of them are recruiting right now to bring players in to their group and to their alliance for a shot at winning this. Well, once this is all over, it just wouldn't surprise me if they kind of just dipped and either went to go and try and make a group in another kingdom that just has overall less volatility and has higher percentage chances of things being able to succeed. And I'll give you an example of this, right? Chisgul has made projects in Rock. He also had made projects in Call of Dragons, and they all lasted a pretty decent amount of time right along with the people there assisting him kind of throughout the endeavors. And so he also didn't make a project for the first time around, at least from what I recall, in Rock when they did some kind of event like this. And in Call of Dragons, he definitely did it, even though he did make a project close to global release. And so with that in mind, there were higher chances for just projects in general, regardless of who's making them or not, to be able to be a little bit more successful when you're not participating in something like this. And so, as I said, I just don't anticipate them to kind of stick around that long. If they do, great, but it just wouldn't surprise me if they don't. And I say that because if you are a player who is joining one of these content creator projects on this kingdom, again, just approach it with a realistic level of expectation, which is don't join for them, join because you understand what this kingdom is going to be, and you're planning to play here for the long haul, regardless of what it turns into, unless you are doing it with a temporary mindset because maybe you just want to experience a lot of PvP, maybe you're a spender and you want to whale out and you just want to rogue it up. If you have the appropriate mindset coming in, totally fine. I just don't want anyone to go in with unrealistic expectations only to find out something else. The next thing is that in this kingdom, you are going to see a level of incentivized spending. Well, why is that? Number one, it's because there's content creators in there. There is a small factor for that. Number two, and probably most importantly, is that, and well, there's probably 2 additional points here, but the second one is that because there's rewards and they're offering people a chance to win, even if it is just one alliance. Number 3, it's that you are going to be in a position to have an extreme level, I would say, from what I've usually seen on average of PvP. There is going to be a lot of PvP happening in this server. I would be shocked if there wasn't an extreme or high level of PvP, because in each of these particular events for kingdoms I witnessed, in Infinity Kingdom, especially the first two, there was a lot of PvP that ensued. And so I would imagine the same thing will happen here. And because of that, this is kind of like a rogue player / rogue group / rogue alliances delight. This is the birthday cake scenario of what you want just to go and get your nom-noms. So I would not even put it past me, not even put it past the opportunity that rogue players or people that just want to go and cause havoc are going to join this as well. And I'll probably be looking out for that, because it would be absolutely hilarious, and it usually happens on average. So if anything, I'd be shocked if it didn't. But the reason I bring that up is because this is another factor that can also cause for another potential poor playing experience of people getting, if you can get zeroed here, again, people have to let me know if you can incur dead troops. I'm not 100% sure, but let's say if you can, or if you're just getting attacked and getting resource looted and getting troops sent to your hospital, this is something that can also create a negative player experience where people are being subjected at a very earlier stage than you probably would in a normal home kingdom or normal kingdom that is not a special event type of kingdom or server, to where you may get subjected to a lot of PvP, or a lot more PvP than you would, or getting attacked when you would rather just be trying to develop your account and level up so you can participate in PvP later on. Just something to keep in mind. And then the next one is that not only will there be incentivized spending, but the spending can turn into snowball spending, where if you and your alliance want to win, I would be shocked if they do not make their money back from this kingdom within the first hour of the server releasing, effortlessly within the first day. This is one of those types of kingdoms and one of those types of events that really not only incentivizes spending, but it really can create snowballs for spending, because you're pitting alliances against each other with only one winner, meaning one alliance can win. So you can kind of make your own insinuations from that as you'd like, but it is what it is. The next one is that this idea of I'm kind of worried to even mention that. I was going to make some kind of casino reference, but again, some of you can probably, and I'm not saying this is gambling by any means, even though I'm sure some people have made arguments. I'm just simply saying, be mindful, right? Be mindful with your spending and what this type of kingdom is. This kingdom, let me give you a great example here. This kingdom is almost like an exacerbated version of the Strongest Lord or the Mightiest Governor event. And just chew on them apples for a bit and let that marinate. The next one is that there's going to be a lot of chefs in the kitchen here, meaning there's going to be a lot of alliance leaders and a lot of alliance leadership. And as I was mentioning earlier, it's not as though they're all going to align and kind of hold hands and sing Kumbaya and try to work things out. And because of that, this can also lead to more fighting that's happening early on, because when you have a lot of active alliances and you have a lot of active players, the territory in Zone 1s will fill up faster than normal. Why? Because if you have more alliances and you have more active players, you have more territory that's being built earlier in that zone, which means that you can end up seeing fighting and PvP that happens earlier than what you would maybe typically expect in a traditional or standard kingdom. We already talked about rogue players and rogue alliances. We talked about Zone 1 seeing high PvP. The other thing I want to mention, I guess probably the last one, if not 2 points here, is that these kind of special server events really go against the traditional and standard way of approaching a kingdom. You see, the idea behind playing kingdom builders is that, yes, they are war games, but at the same time, you have to kind of weigh your pendulum of, do I want to have a lot of PvP in my home kingdom, which just kills off the player base and increases player drop-off? Or do I want to develop my kingdom and have high player activity, but depending on if we end up doing any kind of PvP education or PvP training, right, do I maybe run the risk a little bit here and there of maybe just not having a lot of PvP experience going into the KVK? Now, there are ways to address that, of course, but those are just kind of some of the arguments that people will usually make. And so with that in mind, the idea for me and the way I have always looked at kingdom builders is, and this is just really looking at it from a game success standpoint, is that if your kingdom has higher player activity. You have more players playing, more alliances that are active, more people that can make it from one zone to the next and to the next zone. You then potentially have more players that can spend money on your game. Why? Because if you're not killing off the player base and your attrition rate is low and not high, and you're keeping players actively engaged in the kingdom, that only benefits the game and the developers in the end. Why? Because more players are playing, which means there's a higher percentage chance of finding more needles in the haystack, which are your spenders, that will spend on the game. When you create environments where you don't care about the amount of total active players in a kingdom, when you just want to have one alliance rule everything and have everything, or only a few alliances, anything that you kind of, now keep in mind, player drop-off is a normal thing. You're always going to have players that are going to stop playing in that kingdom for any number of reasons. This will always happen. It's almost like filling a water bottle up and you poke a tiny hole at the bottom, and it's just a constant drain. You're always going to have player drop-off no matter what. But what you can control and what you can do are the actions that you implement on that kingdom that can reduce the rate of player drop-off. And therefore, when you do these things, not only does your kingdom win, but the developers win too as well. And if the developers are winning and they're making a lot of money, then the game keeps going and they keep adding on features and updates, etc. Right? It's kind of like this circle of life thing, not to make a Lion King reference, but it is what it is. And at the same time, I'm not sitting here saying that every single kingdom needs to adopt this mentality. You guys can play however you want. That's the whole point of a kingdom builder going into a new kingdom, is you may not have one kingdom experience the same thing that another one will. And so it's up to everyone. I just want to kind of point out some of the, what I feel are just common denominators across the board as it pertains to games in this genre, and maybe what I would feel are just some kind of common sense logical approaches on, well, yeah, of course, if you want your game to keep surviving, you wouldn't just go in there and every kingdom is just going to take this, we're just going to be the one mega alliance approach and recruit all the spenders, all the top players, we're going to take all the best rewards, and then everyone else can just kind of have whatever they want. Even if that may be more of a generalized or trending approach, in an average amount of cases, it doesn't mean that it applies to every single case. And again, I don't want to get into like a whole TED Talk thing, because I could really do a deep dive on kind of kingdom building structures and mechanics and outlooks and approaches and what the pros and cons are and effects from those and etc. But I just wanted to at least state a little bit of that going in. With that in mind, that is pretty much going to be it for me. My main hope and takeaway for anyone watching this is just think before you make a decision. Go in educated and understanding what this kind of event and what this kind of kingdom is going to be before you decide to start. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying don't spend money. I'm just saying to educate yourself before you decide and before you choose to go. And that's all I would ask of anyone, right? I'm not the type of person to be negative against the game and to say, how dare the developers, how dare the CCs promote it, how dare people join this kingdom? No, not at all. I just want you to be informed. And whatever decision you decide to make is up to you. With that in mind, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Have you experienced a similar kind of event in another kingdom builder? And if so, how did it go? If you're someone who participated in the events in Infinity Kingdom, I would love to hear your view. Is your view different than my view? Is it similar? Did you see other things? And then if you're someone who's maybe on the fence about participating in this, or if you want to participate, or if you don't want to, why? Let me know in the comments below. That's going to be it for me. As always, until next time, I'll catch you later.